On this week's episode of Two Movies Enter, One Movie Leaves, we have a bit of a standoff in the buildings. We've got the Raid Redemption versus Dredd, so tune in to find out which one of them comes out on top and puts a bullet in the other one's head or some other violent stuff. Yeah, so welcome to the show. This week we're going to be exploring. I keep saying with Dredd, I keep saying Alex Garland directed it. I keep forgetting he didn't direct it. He only wrote it. Well, only wrote it. Yeah, he wrote it. And it was Pete Travis who directed it.
So
I'm sure
me a bit about Pete Travis.
I don't know much about Pete Travis. He did Cold Feet, The Jury, Oma, which was actually very good. Well, I suppose Cold Feet was very good as well. It's big in the 90s, was it?
Late 90s, early 2000s.
It was about like 30-somethings or something like that. It was like the English version of 30-something, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of that age where you're settling down a little bit and losing your youth.
Yeah, it was like Ross's... Emily, who Ross ended up with, she was like the main one in it, and the fella James McAvoy, was it? He was a Northern Ireland actor. It was absolutely massive over on this side of the world. I think there might have been an American version of it as well, but it was very twee and a bit shit. I never looked at it because it was like, why the fuck would you look at some crap like that when you could be looking at something like Dredd? Yeah. Although of course you'd have to go skip into the future, or else look at the Sloan version of Dredd, which I think was also pretty good.
It was serviceable,
and it's got a very underrated soundtrack where people talk a lot of, like, obviously the Crow soundtrack is better, but like the Judge Dredd movie soundtrack is actually really good. There is a brilliant Cure song on it, and I can't remember what else is on it because my memory is terrible. But yeah, so we've Judge Dredd, so directed by Pete Travis, but everyone will know Alex Garland better because Alex Garland, of course, is famous for Ex Machina. I think he wrote the 28 Days. Yeah, he did 28 Days Later and Sunshine, which were done by Danny Boyle. With it, but what was it? Oh god, I'm gonna have to just look it up there. The other movies, the Annihilation, that was one I couldn't think of. Oh yeah, Civil War. I must look at Civil War. Just talking out loud.
Yeah, so
thinking out loud, not talking out loud.
That, yeah, I'm sure people are very interested in that.
Yeah, but well, it might be. Someone might be there going, I wonder what they're going to watch.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Can't wait to hear.
Yeah, but
what they decide to watch and then forget about.
Yeah, but then The Raid, which is an Indonesian movie directed by Welshman Gareth Evans.
Yeah.
That's... Yeah, I suppose we'll start off with our scoring kind of things, with the plots.
Yes.
Which we never really do. Well, we're starting to do it a bit better, I think. So what's the plot of The Raid, Laura?
Plot of The Raid is basically, it's a fucking... What's the word? It's a siege film, basically. That's all it is. I mean, like, you've got cops are going in and they get stuck in a terror block, and it's horrific violence, and it's actually entertainingly horrific violence.
Instead of going down to get out, they have to go up and get the main bad guy to get out. There's a few twists and turns in it as well, which we will spoil at some point going along through it. And Dredd is basically the same thing. It's set in Mega City 1 in the future, where a post-apocalyptic war where kind of like there's no longer law enforcement now. They have like just one person as the judge, jury, and executioner. So you have one of the judges, Dredd, he's out and then he gets called to a murder with a rookie to a tower block in Mega City 1.
Yeah, and again it just turns into a siege because again, surprisingly enough, the apartment block is run by a crime lord. Yeah. Or a crime lady in this case.
I think that's why I picked the two, because the plots are very similar. Totally different executions.
Yeah.
But they're both films that are fucking really, really violent.
Super
in separate ways.
And great visually as well. Both of them have their own visual stylistics that are absolutely fantastic.
So I don't think there's really any arc for any of the characters. Well, apart from maybe in Judge Dredd you have Anderson, who's the rookie, and anyone who's familiar with Judge Dredd will know kind of like the judges, they have these thing called psychic judges. The Psi unit. So she's one of them. She's one of the most famous ones. She's probably not as famous as Judge Dredd, but I think people that are fans of 2000 AD would hold Judge Anderson in very high regard. She's one of the original kind of story kind of thing that came along in the 80s and was very adult orientated, and there were more kind of like deeper stories, whereas with Judge Dredd some of the stories were a little bit silly. Like you'd have ones where it was like big fat people who could dislocate their jaws eating each other.
Nice.
Whereas Judge Anderson was always a little bit more serious, or kind of like exploring kind of more esoteric things.
Themes.
Yes. But like, so you have her arc where she's going in as a rookie and she comes out with, at the end of it, kind of like a fully formed judge nearly. It's her, and it's nearly, you're kind of watching or getting introduced to that world of the judges through her eyes. And of course Judge Dredd is one of the more famous judges, and he's one of the most brutal judges. They don't get into his history or any background characteristics, which you don't need. It's just an action movie. I think they wanted to avoid the Stallone Judge Dredd
and stuff,
well, not even comparison, but the mistakes that they made where they kind of went, which I kind of like. They went into the lore where you kind of know all about like the Fargo being the chief judge that founded the judges, and Dredd was one of the clones of, you know, so he was like pure and all that, why he's, whereas there's absolutely none. You don't really know anything about Dredd other than he's just
straightforward and abides by the law abiding, law enforcing kind of thing, whereas a lot of the other the judges, I suppose, are in the pocket of criminality.
Well, some of them are. In the comics, you always have. Well, actually, I think it was the second story where it's like Judge Dredd's brother Rico. He ends up busting him because he's crooked, and he said when crooked judges get busted, they don't kill him. They send him off to like a Titan, the Mars, is it? Moon. Is Titan the moon of Mars?
I don't know. Continue.
Yes, but Titan,
I think so,
where they get like their nose cut off and they just have to work like on that for like, 30 or 40 years.
Is that to spite their face?
Probably. Well, it's the only way that they can breed, working on Titan. So
Story.
How did I get to Rico?
Well, it was like,
about the bad judges.
Cops,
You were saying about the bad judges, Whereas I think in the Raid, it's a little bit more, they're going in with Dredd, it's a day in life. With the Raid, it's an extraordinary event where they're going into this place that's been known for years, that it's like a no-go zone even for cops. It's never been taken over by a criminal network.
They're going in trying to clear it, and of course you have the additional undercurrent of family ties again there as well. Yeah,
but as well, it's all been led by this bent cop who wants to go in and take over the block for himself, who wants to become the head, but he was sent in there to die by like some other gangsters who you never really find out about. So there's a bit more of a backstory, I think, with the Raid, even though whereas I think with Dredd it's more environmental storytelling. There's a lot of little nods to kind of things going on. There's nods to Chopper and stuff. Which
so I suppose they do kind of set it up insofar as they give Mama's history, like, and it is kind of, you empathise with her then, because she was a prostitute basically, who rose up against her pimp and took over his real estate.
But she's more vicious than any of them.
That's it. She got the shit cut out of her, basically her face all cut and bet to this, but she got her own revenge by biting his willy off. Yes,
but that doesn't justify her murdering loads of innocent
No, it doesn't
people.
But you can say it's the rise of, and sort of the victim becomes the victimizer, I suppose.
But they don't really, they give a very brief backstory in Mega City 1 at the start of it, which is all you really need. So it's more just well, it's not as if they're going to give Indonesian film, as if they're going to give a backstory of Indonesia was formed in the year. But so I suppose with the plot, which one would you give it to?
Story arc and plausibility. Well, I mean, I suppose the thing is, a couple of years ago, you might have said, the Raid, because it's happening in a real, it's Jakarta, you could see it happening and all the rest, and Dredd is very far-fetched in the future, the way things are going.
No, it's not. See, this is the whole thing. Dredd was, even in the 70s,
it's a reflection of the times.
But now we're after getting closer to, we have a lot of the same technological things, and as well, because overpopulation, it's not becoming a thing, it is a thing. It is
a thing. Yeah, that is. And I think this whole thing of people just getting judge, jury and executioner, that happens a lot nowadays. People, if there's a hint of a scandal or an issue, it's just kind of like, nope, they're home drawn and quartered.
Like real kind of like, I think, see, this is the terrible with Dredd, why it works so well in the comics is he's kind of the villain, he's a fascist. But the world is so fucked up, you need someone like him. But it's like there was one scene in it where they could, if it was more like the comics, this is what I was trying to say to you, it would have, what would have happened was when he, at the start where there's these guys that they end up taking someone hostage, Dredd kills your man, but in the comics he would have sentenced her to like time in the cubes, which is prison, because she got taken hostage, and it was like, you know, obstructing justice, and you know, where he's not as
black and white, as in the comics
in this. So, but like me, it's so people kind of like go, if when you're reading it, you kind of go, yeah, we need someone like Dredd, but the reality of someone like Dredd is fucking horrific.
Terrifying,
like,
yes, exactly, yeah.
So who would you give it today?
Well, I suppose story arc and plausibility. Because I'm going to have to give it to The Raid, I think, just because it is a little bit more grounded in reality. You could see it happening today, I suppose, as far as Dredd is sort of
I've little to no doubt that it does happen today. Like.
Yeah. So is that what we're going on?
No, well,
true life events?
I'm not going to really go on plausibility for the plot kind of too much.
True life events?
I think it's a draw really with it, because the plots are basically the same thing with it. So getting on to the next round of our thing, we're marking on entertainment value and rewatchability. This is, I think, where it gets really tricky.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be really tricky the whole way throughout, because both of them, you basically got Kung Fu or the Indonesian, I think it's Silat. Let me check that.
Martial art they're using.
Yeah, Indonesian. I don't know, I'll never find it.
Pencak Silat.
Yeah. Versus like guns and punches in the throat.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't like it. I haven't seen The Raid since it probably came out, and I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed it again. I'd watch it easy again. The action sequences in it were fucking insane.
I know people always describe like sort of fight choreography as like, oh, it's balletic and stuff like that. This really was like really intricate ballet. It was like you actually couldn't follow the action. It was that like intricate and well choreographed, and it was like fucking snap, 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 and you know, it's almost like over the top cartoon style in how sort of vicious and frenetic and fast paced it was.
It didn't seem like there was cuts as well. Some of it, like when he was fighting loads of people, like people, there was when the new Daredevil series came out.
That's what it reminded me of actually as well. Yeah.
But remember, people were going like, oh my god, that fight scene in the corridor.
Yeah. I was like, this is like 10 times that fight car.
It's fucking way more people. Yeah, and it was like around the bend in the corridor. And like it's the fight scenes are fucking immense.
Yeah.
With it.
So I suppose from that point of view, like, I mean, you could watch it over and over and over again to actually catch the different moves, because there's an awful lot of it I'm kind of like, Jesus Christ, and you're too busy like almost laughing in shock at some of the horrendous like fucking acts of violence in it, you know?
I think the way it gets set up as well, if you don't know what you're going to be watching, it doesn't set it up for, like, it doesn't start off like Crank or anything like that. So it starts up very dry and very militaristic when they're going in.
Kind of almost police procedural kind of thing, and then all of a sudden it's just like nutty violence. Yeah,
but like fucking not even, it's not cartoon violence, it's not over the top, it's, well, some of it is, but it's not cartoony, it's just, it's the Matrix basically in real life. Where it's no slow-mo, but like, I mean, they must have been on wires for some of it. Like, there's a lot of kind of like jumping backwards, but it feels realistic.
Yeah, it's not like sort of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of like, oh, let's soar across the treetops and be real gentle. It's very fast-paced martial arts. And it is like I said, Matrix.
Fucking brutal, but like there's guns in it as well. It's very John Wick, I think, would be. It must be based. I know John Wick, there's a load of things, there's jiu-jitsu in it, and there's a load of other kind of, but it seems it's functional fighting, you know, some of the things, like it looks pretty, but you look at it and you kind of go, well,
you're going to get the job done there, you're going to break someone's fucking nose and throat.
Whereas Dredd, it is more kind of like shooting the fucking head and using the different, like the guns that they have in Judge Dredd, they have like different rounds of ammunition in it, so they have like explosives, ricochet, high X, the explosives, like, you know, incendiary, all these different, you know.
But I mean, I suppose if you're into it for the entertainment value, for like violence, there's plenty of violence in Dredd insofar as like the start of it, like fucking 3 guys get skinned and thrown over a fucking balcony.
The main thing, I suppose, the storytelling, well, it's the thing in Judge Dredd, the way there's a drug called slow-mo, which is when users take it, it slows everything down to 1/10 the speed. So the first thing is these guys getting skinned, they get forced to take it, and then they get thrown over the edge. So
it's slow mo descent, and of course the kind of it's so incongruent as well, because like they show the sort of the visual effects of what it looks like when you're on the drug, and it's just this beautiful kind of like crystalline vision. Everything becomes hyper focused, I suppose, and every shard of light just becomes like this brilliant rainbow.
It's done really well, like,
and it's really beautiful and pretty. And yes, you're sort of it's beautiful and pretty, and these guys have like been absolutely skinned alive and hurtling.
But even like with the guys that are on the run at the start of it as well, like they're doing slow mo and the thing, and they crash the car and it's in slow motion from the inside, and with them getting shot in the head, you know, it's just see, this is very because I think the two of them have the same amount of rewatchability. It's not like after looking at the two of them, I'm not like, oh, I'd look at The Raid easy, but I don't want to look at Dredd. Remember we were talking about it with like a Full Metal Jacket and Platoon. We were both like, I would look at Platoon for a few years. Whereas with Dredd, I'd easily look at that again.
I'd watch either of them again. I probably would watch The Raid quicker again, just to catch all the various fucking fights that were going on, though. That's the one thing I would say.
Well, yeah, we'll give it to The Raid then, because I was going to say both of them, but you're breaking the tie on.
I am indeed. So the theme then, identity, depth, etc. What do we think the theme of it is?
The team in The Raid, I suppose, but they throw the family thing in on it.
They do. It's like one brother, I suppose, just to give a bit of background. One brother is a cop, and the other brother kind of went off the rails years ago and vanished, and he's turned up in this
he's like the deputy.
Yeah, he's like the criminal gang. Kind of a thing. So you have that whole kind of like, oh, well, are they going to... They're at opposite ends of the battle. Are they going to kill each other? Are they going to help each other? And, you know, will you rescue them?
You never even really... I don't know. There's never... It's not like...
It's not overly tense in so far as that, but there is always the way that it could go, like, oh, well, he's going to turn around and shoot him in the back of the head at the end. It
feels like it's kind of setting it up for more in the future or something. Or you kind of think that... I don't know. I thought that your man knew going in that his brother was in there, so he's going in to rescue his brother, kind of, which he...
That was he was trying to rescue him, and the brother's like, well, what have I to go back to? Like, you know, this is my life now. But again, I suppose, with that, the theme, it's just sort of, it's betrayal and, you know, sort of people going one way and getting fucked over and fucked over again, because you have, as I said, the cop going in at the start is ostensibly to fucking pull a raid, but he's...
But even with that, is that like a team? The team really of the two is just violence. Isn't it? Like, it's justice with it, because... And like what you got, like there's a guy that helps out the remain, like, I mean, they get brutally murdered at the start of it in a fucking amazing scene actually, where the lights are off and there's guys just above him, but they can't see him because the lights are off, and someone, I think they shoot their gun. So like just from the gun lights up, so they see him and they all get killed. So you have like about 5 people left that are trying to survive, kind of like being hunted by everyone in the entire block. And it's the same in Dredd. It's Dredd and Anderson. We should have said this in the plot, really, being hunted by everyone in the block. Well, most of them. But in The Rage, you do have the thing where people help out. Whereas in Dredd, like, even the medical guy won't let him into the room because he's like...
you're not coming in here, like, you're not getting killed as well.
So it's kind of like the guy that does help out, he kind of saves him at the start of it. But like when the cops are going in to raid the building, this guy's trying to get in. He's like, I've medicine for my wife, and some of the cops are like, no, fuck you, you're fucking staying here. And one of the guys says, look, we'll escort you up, and he escorts him up, and then he helps him later on. So I suppose there's that kind of, in the raid, there's that little bit of kind of...
if you send out good karma, you know, it's like it will come back to you. That's, you never know who you're helping on the way up that can help you on the way down, kind of a thing.
Whereas fucking no one helps in Dredd, although he doesn't ask for help from anyone.
No, he just continues.
That's the thing with Dredd. Even the whole thing with Dredd, he kind of goes with Anderson. At one point, he's like, right, we can either go down and get away, or we can go up. And she's like, is going up an option? And he's like, you know, where Dredd is just like into fucking...
I suppose they do have mild bits of help, like the woman with the baby, you know, and she's just like, I just want you off this floor, my family.
But if she knew that they were after killing her husband just seconds earlier.
That's what I mean, but it is, again, it's this whole thing, people will help, and then it's the regret of knowing that, Jesus, this guy that was coming at him and just being a horrible murderer, he actually is a caring family man who has a wife and a baby at home. So it's
I think the difference between two of them as well is in Dredd, there is just a sort of and then it's just like, right, we have to get on with it, you know, because there's always going to be crime, and they even say that only 6% of crimes actually get answered to a mega city one, whereas at the end of the raid it's like, all right, we're after killing this guy, this brutal mob boss, but now someone else is just going to replace it. That's it, you know. There's no kind of,
there's the inevitability of sort of crime, basically, violence.
Where there's justice but there's not justice. So I think thematically the two are probably fucking identical as well.
Exactly.
So I think we have to give it to the two, and depth wise, like they're both the same. There's not much depth to them. They're action movies, like at their core. That's all that you know. It's not important. And then acting.
Now, here's where it gets difficult, because do you include all of the martial arts skills in the acting section there? Because if you do, I
suppose you do, I suppose you do. But at the same point,
it's performance as well, you know, the amount of performance that went into
it is the actors that are doing it. It's not like there's like all of a sudden kind of like the main character disappears and it's like a big mustachio.
With a big fucking bad wig or something like that, and that's the wrong height. But like that's the thing. I mean, there's plenty of memorable characters in like Judge Dredd. I mean, like Ma herself, like obviously,
Lena Headey,
or Headey
Lamar.
But obviously, she's fantastic. She's like cold and calculating, and
I think
terrifying.
when it came out at the time, it would have been at the start of Game of Thrones.
Just before,
so people would have been seen her in that as was it Ciri? It was Ciri Lannister, wasn't it?
Cersei
Lannister, yeah.
I was kind of like, hello, Ciri, what? No,
but, you know, kind of like with the long blonde hair and kind of like, you know, in the fucking regal dresses and stuff.
Gowns and stuff.
And then all of a sudden, and like, the fucking thing is, the character Mama looks a lot more like her in real life. Than, obviously not with big scars on her fucking face. But like, she's a punk, she's a London punk. Old punk.
Hey, don't call her old.
You know, like she used to be a punk. You know, and people wouldn't be familiar with her from Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. That's what she. Well, no, she would have been doing stuff before that, but you know, it's like people were just.
But don't you argue with yourself? Well, they would have known her from that. No, they wouldn't. She would have done so. And then no.
It's not me arguing. It's Pazuzu arguing with me, or me arguing with Pazuzu.
Yeah, you're just having multiple arguments within your head. Yes,
but it's like she was really, really good, and she kind of hams it up.
But you have to for that kind of thing. You have to realise, like, I mean, this woman has everybody in like a fucking 25,000 strong population of one apartment block living in absolute abject terror of her. So she has to be. And
Don Gleeson was in it as well. Don Gleeson was very good at it.
Yeah, because he was this poor, like, basically he was like the beaten dog kind of a thing. He was.
Well, he was just a regular guy that they got him to cut his eyes out so he could interface with computer systems. And. When someone first, I was like, fucking know him from something, because you don't. He
is virtually unrecognisable in this.
But I do think there's a really, and Karl Urban, I think it'd be remiss not to kind of mention how good he is as Dredd.
The ultimate Dredd. He's I won't say he's personality-less or anything like that, but he's just that fucking stoic,
controlled.
Yeah, that's
he was a fan of it. I remember at the time there was a lot of talk, or all the interviews with him, and he was like, I've been a fan of Judge Dredd for fucking like decades. And like, say one of the problems with the Sylvester Stallone thing is he doesn't wear his helmet for fucking most of the movie, which is the big thing about Dredd is meant to be that he's like,
you never see his face,
the faceless kind of like version of the law.
It's just the grimace you see like underneath the mask.
And you know, because Sylvester Stallone was like, sure, I have to have my face. It's a Sylvester. Whereas Karl Urban, fair play to him, where he was egoless, and he was his thing where he was like, have to keep the helmet on the whole time. Because that is the character.
Yeah, like, you never see his face.
When you,
I know, you end up
in some things,
to see his face.
But it's just that is him. He plays it fucking
it's spot on, like
perfectly.
If you only ever read a couple of the comics and then up to this, you were just like, it's the comic to life.
Like I would have always thought when I was younger that Clint Eastwood would have made a brilliant Dredd.
Older Dredd,
Well, especially say around you won't know, but like people that might know the Judge Dredd universe around the Necropolis area where he ended up quitting and ended up becoming the dead man out in the Cursed Earth and stuff. He had that kind of Carlos Esquire, I think, had him drawn. I can't remember who he had him based on, but he always just reminded me of Clint Eastwood. But especially Unforgiven is like a fucking Judge Dredd story, like an old Dredd story. But Yeah, I see.
So you've argued around there. Like, I mean, there's great performances from well-known stars in Dredd, but if you're going on performance as well, the stunts and the fight choreography in the Raid.
So what you essentially have is like acting versus
performance,
stunts.
Shall we give it one each? I think. Because they're both kind of different sides of the same coin, aren't they?
I don't know. I think I'd go more for Dredd with it because, like, I think the primary thing is acting and characters as well. I think the characters are better developed in Dredd and they're more kind of clear.
Yeah, in fairness, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot more memorable on both sides, as in, like, you've got the dirty judges, you've got our two heroes as such, you've got all the criminals, and you've got a few general members of the public, and they're all very memorable. Yeah.
There's like great acting in it. Like, I mean, there's really good acting. Like we're saying, the Kung Fu is fucking amazing, or the martial arts are amazing in the Raid, but it's just, I don't know, I think acting, the characters are better there.
Okay.
Dialogue with storytelling and context. See, this is where it's
difficult to compare because obviously it was not dubbed. The Raid, it was screen capped, wasn't it? So you're seeing someone else's interpretation of the dialogue and the storytelling. So you're kind of hoping it's fairly spot on, but it's not the same as being able to sit down and listen to it in a language that you actually can comprehend and understand. Like, I mean, I unfortunately I don't have Korean as a second language or anything like that.
Well, it wouldn't help because it's in Indonesian.
Oh, sorry. What am I thinking of? Yeah, sorry, Indonesian, yes. But you know what I mean? It's like, it is sometimes, if it's not in your primary language, it can be very hard to get the nuances and get, sort of little in-jokes or slang or any of that kind of stuff. It's just...
I don't think there's many jokes in it.
Probably not. No, it didn't strike me as much of a comedy now, in fairness. But... storytelling, context, I mean, like, they painted a fairly decent picture in the Raid. Dredd, I suppose you actually had numerous things going on. You had, as I said, the rookie rising up. You had Dredd kind of like just being Dredd. You had these dirty cops. You had the rise of Ma. Yeah, you had, as I said, Don Gleason's kind of storyline going on.
And you had Mega City 1 as well. I really liked what they did because
that's nearly a character in its own
right. Instead of throwing everyone into it and kind of like spending 10 minutes explaining the plot, it is very much environmental storytelling, like what they do in Dark Souls, whereas as you go, there's bits and pieces going on around, or sometimes they drop things, or you kind of look at buildings and there's graffiti. And even like when they go outside, at one point when they blow through the hole in the wall, and even just about the guns, they don't sit down and say, oh, this is the lawgiver and it does this and it does that.
Yeah, it's just demonstrated.
You learn as it goes with it, and you kind of go, so it kind of seems to amp up the further it gets into it. There's always new things, and then like when the judges the corrupt judges come into it at the end, and they're kind of like talking to Dredd and they're saying bits, and you kind of learn more about Dredd. So I think the way the storytelling is done in Dredd is better.
Yeah.
With it, say leaving the dialogue really out, because there's not much dialogue in either.
Yeah, that's it. It's just service the violence, really, I suppose. I
think I'd give it to Dredd on that.
I suppose I would as well, because there are some, I suppose, memorable enough one-liners or people, So, yeah, go on, give it to Dredd. I agree with you. You've won me over. Cinematography. Now, this is going to be a difficult one, because I think both of them have absolutely stellar cinematography for two very different things. As I keep on harping on about, the fight choreography in the Raid is absolutely stark.
Even the palette to it, like, I mean, the Raid is very dark, but not dark as in kind of fucking
tonality.
End of, like,
exactly,
fucking Game of Thrones dark.
Yeah,
it's
just all got that seedy kind of a cheap apartment lighting kind of a thing, and it's. You get that feel of like this really rundown inner city kind of
pastel-y, and it kind of like charcoal-y kind of thing, like
greys and very sort of like dull greens and stuff.
Dredd is slightly, but more kind of washed out, kind of like more kind of sunburnt.
I think Dredd is very, very technicolor, obviously, when we have the, sort of the visual, the slow-mo, and I think actually that's something I don't recall seeing in cinema before.
I've never seen it. I haven't seen it after.
That's it. I think it's a very unusual effect, and it's particularly beautiful as well, as the word I can put on it. It's just this absolute glistening
I don't know how to, because it is like, it's like, there's like light around the edges of things and kind of like sparkles coming off it and overly saturated colours with the whole
It's
thing.
all just like hyper reality, except just, as I said, very beautiful and pretty. I don't know beautiful as in like, oh, it's beautiful, but just actually visually appealing kind of a thing, you know, even when it is, as you said, horrific things like people getting fucking skinned and thrown over in a car crash or something like that. It's like somebody's face getting blown up actually looks very, very visually appealing.
I think in the Raid they utilise the darkness when it does go all dark, like we were saying about with the scene with the gun flash and you know, the stuff like that they do. And there's a bit where they're hiding in the showers as well, and where there's, I don't know, it's hard. They are very different, I think, stylistically. With it, like you were saying, Dredd can be more technicolor. Well, there's actually no colours really in the Raid other than
it is all these muddy kind of dull colours. But I suppose even going into like the whole thing of cinematography, it's like the visual language, the lighting, the wardrobe, and all the rest. The wardrobe in Judge Dredd is fantastic. You don't question it. Not for a second you kind of go, Jesus, he looks a bit of a plonker walking around with a fucking helmet on his head and like tactical gear.
Got it fucking fantastic. It was like leather outfit, and instead of with the shoulder pads, for people who don't know about the comics, that one of the shoulder pads is a massive fucking eagle that like would not fit on anyone's shoulder. And like the Judge Dredd, the Stallone film, the uniforms were fucking spot on. Now I mean spot on. They look exactly like they were out of the comic. But they don't look realistic because they don't look functional.
Yeah, that's it. This is all, it's tactical kind of gear, and it's you can see why it's utilised the way it is. And as I said, you don't for a second question it. You kind of go, yes, of course they'd be wearing something.
They're all scratched up and kind of like everything. Their uniforms are in shit and stuff because they're basically like at war every fucking minute of the day. Yeah. So of course they're going to wear it. And Judge Dredd, there wasn't even a scratch on his helmet. It was all shiny and the badges were all shiny.
Helmet, eh? No scratches on that.
But you know, whereas in this, it's like.
Having said that, I do think, say, the wardrobe and all the rest in the Raid was also very good. Like, I mean, you had.
It's very realistic.
Do you remember? I can't remember the character's name, but that one guy who was just like, he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to shoot you. I'll take more fun." And like,
he was like not the main bad guy, but he kind of was the main bad guy.
Like, I mean, he looked so sweaty and grimy. They all dirty. Look sweaty. Oh my god!
They're all wearing baggy, loose clothes, as you would, like, I'd imagine, in kind of like,
in the heat and stuff. Yeah, and they just have that look of like that dead heat. Kind of flush of sweat and sheen and all the rest. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. But they probably were like
probably roast and jump around the place anyway. But so what do you think anyway? Again, visually, I honestly, because of that effect in Dredd, I think I would give it to it without question.
I give it to Dredd easily,
because I haven't seen anything like that before.
I think there's different.
Startling.
I think there's different styles in Dredd as well as it's going along. There's a lot of different bits and pieces, like as well when for the different floors, like before the lights go out in Dredd and before they kind of start getting kind of shuttered into different things, it's more colourful, and then when it goes into the dark, it's still kind of red. There, I don't know, and there's a bit where like the guns, where it's like the big heavy machine guns that Mama has, where they just rip a whole block
the whole floor apart.
And then when all the smoke is there,
actually, isn't it?
It's just like the silhouette of Dredd walks out and throws someone over
exactly.
and just walks back into the thing where you're kind of like, now that's like straight out of Dredd.
It's very cool shot.
Where like in the comics he knows how to terrify people, and he does, and it is just, it's a very Batman fucking thing. But without, like, Batman wouldn't kill someone, he should do, but like with Dredd it's just
But Dredd, you can't give it to anything but Dredd, if you know what I mean.
And editing.
Well, I'm actually going to come straight out and I'm going to say I think the Raid should get it for this. Again, for the choreography. It's just trying to keep up with all the fight scenes and keeping the thread going between like the different rooms and where everybody is located in it. You know where you are, and you
when the action fucking kicks off, and that it is fucking all over. Like, especially when they get attacked at first, and there's like people get shot dead, and then they're in one room and they're trying to get down, and you kind of think, well, when they break down through the floor into the other apartment beneath him, it'll be fun. And it gets fucking worse. Then there's like explosions but there's so much happening. And that fight in the hallway, well, there's numerous fights where he takes on a lot of people. It's just cut effortlessly, where it does feel like it's one fucking take. It's quite obviously not, like, but it feels like it. That must have been very, very hard to do. So yeah, I'd be with you. I think like the editing in Dredd is very good as well. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's just.
But I think the level of
redemption,
skill,
it's masterful. I think for an action movie as well, because it's. But one thing we'll say with the pacing of the raid, for anyone who hasn't seen it or anyone. It is a bit off when they have the
quieter
I think it
moments.
takes too long to kind of get started.
Yeah. And there are a lot of quieter moments. Again, I don't mind them because I feel they're build in tension and stuff like that, and it gives you a bit of a breather between the next fucking absolute, bananas fucking choreography kind of style of fight. But there is a lot of sort of, okay, now we'll take a breather and we'll stop and we'll step back, and it kind of breaks it a little bit, but I like that though, in fairness.
Dredd, the editing is just like, I think, average.
It's standard.
It's done well. It's paced, like the film is paced very well. Although it does kind of, sometimes with some of the action, it does feel like it's a bit kind of, because there's only so much of shooting people you can get. So whereas like I think it's the slow-mo stuff, when people are on slow-mo and they're getting shot, it really adds to it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like in The Matrix when they brought in the bullet time to it. Soundtrack, sound design and film score.
Well, no, there was soundtrack music wise, there wasn't a huge amount in either.
No. Not that none that kind of spring out. So it's, I think, going
to be the sound design.
I think Dredd gets it for like the guns, the explode. There's more kind of.
Do you know one thing that actually stuck out was there was a sickening splush when the three guys landed, and there was basically meat bags landing on the ground. And I kind of was, ugh, I tried to think how they got that particular sound effect Foleyed, but.
But I do think it's like, I can't. Well, I think both of them kind of had nearly a John Carpenter-esque kind of.
Yeah, it was just this sort of slowly,
But I suppose it's a testament as well to. That the soundtrack doesn't take over.
Yeah, it doesn't interfere and you don't notice it.
Like, especially kind of for like high-octane. Well, actually, I can remember Dredd stuff. There was a lot. The music in Dredd gets rather loud. It's kind of more dancey, kind of industrial stuff kicks in.
Well, I think that suits the setting though.
Of course.
I mean? It's like fucking, it could be being played in the apartment block,
Whereas kind of in the raid, I think the action is so fucking. You focus just on the action.
That's it.
So much more
there's too much going on for the senses. So I do think maybe.
I think Dredd gets it, because I do remember some of the songs and kind of some of the music in there going, oh yeah, it's actually fairly good. Now, directing and the vision and the execution.
Bit of a difficult one to call, I think, on this one, because they both have their own sort of specific.
They're pretty unique,
highlights.
both of them, I think.
For two films that are essentially the same, they're both incredibly unique. One is totally, they're poles apart, literally stylistically and visually, and story is basically the same. But
two films as well we didn't really mention. Two films that are made on fucking no budget.
Yeah,
zero budget
given
on both
fuck all
of them.
funding. Yeah,
because it was seen like Dredd. They were like, after the franchise, I think, was given up. They probably were like, oh fuck it, look, give them like a couple of quid and see where it goes.
Yeah, send them off. Yeah.
Because it was meant to be like a trilogy, and it's a shame that it wasn't, because the second one was meant to be like fucking straight into like the world of Judge Dredd with the dark judges, and get into the supernatural thing. That's why they're bringing Anderson into it in the first one as a rookie, because they could have done it with any rookie.
Yeah.
But it's so it's a shame that Raid Redemption had a sequel. I seem to remember seeing part 2 of it, and it was alright, but it wasn't, as good as the first one.
The raid was, I think the vision of it was quite good. It was carried through perfectly for what it was supposed to be. Dredd, I'm kind of leaning towards a little bit more, because if you have, I suppose, the blueprint of the comics and all the rest to look at, and if you compare the two, it absolutely, it just brings the comic to life. So I do think the vision and the kind of the execution of it is spot on to what it was intended to be. And of course, there are some of its own like fucking flourishes in it. I keep on referring back to the cinematic effect of the drugs and all the rest, but that is honestly that is the standout thing about Dredd to me.
It's bizarre that no one's after copying it at all. Really, said. I know people like when Bullet Time came out, but this is the weird thing with it. It just didn't seem to do like killer at the box office. I think when it came afterwards, I think it found a life on DVD and streaming. But it was never enough to kind of give it that push for a sequel. And like Alex Garland, like we were saying, is after going on to do fucking a lot. He's a massive director now. Whereas I think he was talking about that he'd love to go back to it and he wanted to go back. And Karl Urban, he's always been like, I want to go back and do it. You never know, maybe on the strength of the boys and some of the other things, but I don't know. I think Alex Garland was nearly saying that he was going to retire from directing. So it's a shame because there's a Rogue Trooper movie coming out with Duncan Jones directing it, which I think if that does well, maybe there might be room for a Dredd again.
Dredd again.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think I'd give it to Dredd. Yeah, as well for
purely as I said, like you can compare it to the comics and you can see it is after bringing the comics entirely to life. So I think the vision was spot on there.
Well, it did. So like people were such fans of it from a 2000 AD perspective as well that there was like a spin-off comic set in that world, you know. Yeah. And people accepted it. Like imagine if you did that with the Spider-Man.
Yeah, thing, or Batman. Or anything, yeah.
Like even like there's still a lot of people giving out about Robert Pattinson being Batman, where it's like, look, it's a different fucking.
Yeah,
you have
to Ben Affleck.
Yeah. With it, or like the Snyder.
They're still giving out about Michael Keaton and Adam West.
That's people don't realise at the time with that because a lot of people are too. But fucking hell, remember people were like, "Oh, it should be like fucking Adam West was doing it." It's scandalous. That they have someone.
Or if they were going to do it, they should have. They're all like, "Oh, it should be someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger who's like an action hero instead of Michael Keaton." And it's like, no, Michael Keaton is perfect. You can't imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger.
All these people that just did not understand Batman, you know. Whereas, like, you know, if Batman is like a brick shit house, well, he is a brick shit house, but if he is like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he can't blend
into normal society. Yeah, talks like I know Arnold Schwarzenegger does, but it's still fucking Schwarzenegger.
Where it's like the biggest man in Gotham City. So the only one that's the same size and the same exact build as Batman.
Yeah, traps of fucking like you know steel. So so directing obviously goes then to Dredd. So I suppose the last category then is the it factor. The kind of the one of a kindness.
I think Dredd, like we're saying, no one's really copied. Like I mean, as good as the Raid is with the action and stuff,
there's a million other action films that utilize martial arts and like you know a kind of a siege kind of a type thing. Yeah,
there's an awful lot of them.
Like I mean, even if you get it into like TV shows, Supernatural have had like you know TV shows episodes.
What was the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3? Yeah, and even before that thing was it Rio Bravo or Rio Grande? I don't know. Like cowboy films have been and like fucking samurai movies, but it's the action in the Raid make it the special thing, not so much, you know. But even then with the action, even as good as it is,
there's plenty of other like you know martial arts action films that you know are equally as.
And I'm sure there's a load where you haven't, because it's something that I fucking neglected watching for a long time was martial arts movies. And I know there's these like ninja movies from around the same time that are meant to be horrifically violent. And you know, so I'd say there's a bunch of films out there probably similar to the Raid that we just haven't seen because we're not really a fay with that kind of scene.
Yes.
Whereas with Judge Dredd, no one really.
And it was a total surprise because everyone's kind of like, I don't know what to make of this. Like the only kind of good point about it at the start when people were hearing about it was Karl Urban, and a lot of people kind of went, Karl Urban.
Yeah, he wasn't really well known at the time.
Yeah, that's it. But then it was like, I mean, for me personally, I was kind of like, I can see his chin and that kind of thing, but I didn't know what he himself would make of it.
I think he might have done Star Trek at the time, or he might have done the first one, you know, so that's probably what he was most famous for.
He was well off the back of Lord of the Rings at that stage, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of people really knew him for Lord of the Rings. You know, he wasn't.
That was the main reason I would have known him was from Lord of the Rings.
He wasn't the big. Fuck it, you know, like I mean.
Like he's so well known now, I suppose, with the boys and stuff like that. He's a household name, whereas back then, nope.
Like I mean, I think kind of really the boys is after making him, kind of like you know giving him a big career with things, but it's. I don't know.
But the It Factor, which one?
Dredd, without a shadow of a doubt, I think.
So I think we're probably leaning towards Dredd as having won all of this.
Yeah, I think Dredd wins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 4 because we had 2 draws with it. So yeah, Dredd beats The Raid.
Does, as we keep saying every week, both equally great films, and go and watch both. And that's not to say The Raid is a bad film. It's just that on certain points we feel that Dredd won it out.
And it is weird because I remember looking at The Raid and I was like, God, I prefer this so much more to Dredd.
And then we watched Dredd and we're like, oh my God, wow, this is so good.
Because it's just both fucking brilliant films, and I think they're great double feature. If we had the time to sit down and look at 2 movies back to back,
it'd be those.
Fucking great double feature. If they put those on the cinema, and it is like, you have to say, in fairness to the 2 as well, like you were saying before, it's the exact same plot nearly. The exact same movie split.
Yeah, and 2 totally different takes on it. 2 totally different styles.
So, to get that from... Because, fucking... There's only so many stories, anyway, if you're going with the Joseph Campbell thing as well, and there's only so many... But it's the execution of both of them. So it's really, it probably should be a draw to a certain degree if there's different categories in it.
And as well, I suppose you have to realise you have been a lifelong fan of
Dredd fan,
So you're obviously going to have some natural fondness and affinity towards that character in general anyway.
But it's the thing as well with The Raid, it's something that it doesn't seem to be kind of exploding too much. I think it would. I think Netflix are starting to get a lot more Indonesian movies on. But the Indonesian movie industry has been fucking knocking out some amazing movies over the last God knows how long, probably always. But it should be bigger than what it is. I'm amazed that Hollywood aren't outright ripping off. I'm sure it'll come to it like it did with the Japanese thing.
Or the J-horror and stuff like that.
There's some fucking really, really brutal horror movies coming out of Indonesia, and Indonesia has a long history with horror. Going back, so I don't know, I just wanted to get that in there.
Did you? That's great.
But that's it for this week. It's summertime. We're aware people might be listening to podcasts too much, so if you did listen, thank you very much. If you're listening to this in the winter, thank you very much.
If you're listening to this at all, thank you very much.
I
am the law.
We won't insult your intelligence by saying please subscribe.
But you've just done it.
Yes. So look, until next week, where we're going to be doing 2 vampire movies. Because we were giving out, well, not giving out, but I was torn between, God, how can we do Near Dark versus Lost Boys? I can never do that. So we have Only Lovers Left Alive versus A Hunger.
What? I didn't agree to this.
Yeah, you did. Right, so see you then.